Well, my name is Mark Overley. I'm president and coffee buyer for Kaladi Coffee Roasters in Denver, Colorado. I've been a coffee buyer now since 1988.
On our side, we talk to a ton of new shops, right? People that are going into it with vastly different levels of knowledge, right? Some, it's like, I just know there's an opportunity here and I'm starting a coffee shop. Others who have maybe done a little more research. But if you had to give just like one piece of advice or one word of wisdom, right, to that new coffee shop.
Do it right. Nobody wants another stupid ass coffee place. You know, people drive down there, I don't know how many coffee joints open up, and here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna open up your coffee joint, somebody's gonna drive by like, oh, look at that, new coffee joint opened up. 6 months later, drive by, hey, that coffee shop's still there. I'm gonna try that one of these days. 6 months later, they're gonna go in and they're gonna make a decision as soon as they step to that door, whether this is their coffee shop or not. And the last thing we need is another dumbass coffee shop. Do it right, make an impact, so that first impression, that people say, I finally found my coffee shop. That's what it's about.
Because obviously you have a ton of passion for this.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, if I were to, the best honest answer to that is our espresso blend. Okay. And I kind of judge everybody by their espresso blend.
Okay.
And if they do a single origin, I just think it's a cop out. So that's, to me, is like, if you do, and I love tasting different people's approaches of it. I mentioned earlier David Schomer of Vivace Espresso, and it's because, to me, especially with kind of the smaller firms, you really, when you taste an espresso, you're tasting the personality of the person behind the espresso. And I remember tasting David Schomer, his stuff, like, man, that's totally David Schomer. That's totally what he's.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's exactly, and that's kind of what I liked about it. I mentioned Mauro of Cafe Mauro. He had this flavor approach. I loved his espresso, and he had like about 5 different ones, but each one is a signature. Kind of, you could tell, like, it's Mauro's espresso. That's cool stuff. And that's, for me, it's kind of, that was always my favorite thing, because that was kind of like the first thing, as I mentioned, the passion. That's where I started kind of geeking out, like, how does one make a great espresso blend? What makes a good espresso blend? All that stuff. And, that was my, decades long journey, was just trying to figure that part out and kind of tuning that in, and then appreciating what other people come up with, because it's going to be influenced by the person's own preferences, flavor preferences, the equipment that they're using.
That they chose to use.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes when they've switched equipment, like they started with one type of roaster and they switched to another roaster, how that changes and what they do about that. And then these companies, go along where that person leaves, another person comes in, and now it's their espresso. The old espresso kind of keeps going for a while, and then it turns into whatever this other person is. That's what I think, that's, for me, is what I love about it, is that you're getting that kind of personality of each one. And so that's why I say I'm a little judgy when I go into another roaster, because I'm tasting their espresso, kind of like, who are these people? I could get a sense of who they are and what kind of, and it's not even really about, do I like it or not? It's like, okay, I see where they're going here. This is what they're using. This is their approach. I just had a guy in earlier today. He was out of South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. And I could tell when he started asking about different things, I could tell where he was trying to go, and I could lead him to finding something he was going to like, that's always been a challenge in coffee. If I were to have a critique of the coffee, is that while we have all this innovation, every coffee buyer believes that they alone have discovered the secrets of coffee quality. And so they kind of build up this whole aura behind it. And so after a while, they become the most insufferable prima donnas that you could ever, deal with. And so it's very challenging sometimes, because they've all kind of, oh no, only I have it right. It makes it quite frustrating at sometimes, where you're like, no, we're all trying to get to some place. I'm not trying to steal your secrets. It's not a secret. This is, I'm trying to figure out what you're doing, and
because it impacts your product,
right? As opposed to, like, in the brewing industry. I work with a lot of brewers because we produce a concentrate that brewers use.
Okay.
And well, they're totally the opposite. They're always kind of like, hey, how did you figure that? You know, they're all trying, because they're all doing essentially the same thing, but they're being judged on how well they replicate a style.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they've created something. You know, you don't go to a brewery expecting somebody to come up with something you've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking, if you're into IPAs, you're judging that brewer by how well they make that IPA, or that, you know,
against all other IPAs.
Exactly. And when they're judged to a standard. Not so in the coffee industry. It's all a kind of everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and we all believe that we've only figured out how to do it. So we don't share the information further. So that's only
fair enough to say, though. You know, your unique setup aside, everybody has their own setup.
Exactly.
And everybody has so many variables all the way up and down the string.
Right.
How could you possibly fully replicate it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially as you get bigger. You know, because as these, you know, when you're talking about, you know, you go to a large, out in El Paso, there's one of those huge roasting production firms, and there's like 6-7 different roasters there, and they're producing tons of coffee at a time, and they're all running off of roast mapping, you know, software and stuff. So that's how they're trying to work out their consistency standards. But still, somebody has to decide what those parameters are to begin with. And that's where the creation, you know, so it's that art and science, religion and science that makes us, you know, makes coffee what it is.